Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Dave Williams, chairman of the Republican Party of Colorado. Well, Dave, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Well, Dave, President Trump is back on the ballot in Colorado. Do you believe he'll remain on the ballot, or will he be removed again?
We honestly don't know. We think that the United States Supreme Court is going to grant us cert and ultimately rule in our favor. But I've been telling folks I'm not entirely sure about that. In fact, there was an article that expressed Donald Trump's view that he very well could lose. He's concerned that the Supreme Court is potentially worried about their reputation, and I think that's a legitimate concern when you look at people like Justice John Roberts, Chief Justice John Roberts. The guy has had many opportunities to strike down bad leftist laws or bad decisions, but has kind of taken some sort of nuanced route that allowed the underlying problem to continue on or wasn't a complete victory for our side. So I don't know. We we think they'll overturn it because if they don't, then that's going to create more chaos in our national elections and allow for other states like Maine to follow suit and use Colorado as a justification. Ultimately, we're fighting for the right of not only Donald Trump to run and compete fairly in the election, but more importantly, for the right of voters to choose the candidates they want to support or oppose. That's the other thing that gets lost in the shuffle. There's a lot of folks that don't want to vote for Donald Trump, and they should have every right to vote against him and for another candidate. But you can't have a free and a fair election if the government, specifically judges or bureaucrats or other elected officials from the opposition party, telling your party, our party, the Republican Party, who's an acceptable candidate and who's not. That flies in the face of our very system of self governance. So we were very happy to be a party to the case and then appeal to the United States Supreme Court. It's because of our appeal that Donald Trump was allowed to be printed on the ballot, and Jena Griswold reluctantly and begrudgingly had to announce to the world that he was going to be on the ballot. But the fight's not over because ultimately, I think Jena Griswold will try to segment out any votes that went to Donald Trump and not count them unless the Supreme Court tells her to. So we need the Supreme Court of the United States to step in quickly and resolve this as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can't trust Jena Griswold because she is a hyper-partisan hack for the Democrats. She's not a fair person, and we'll do whatever we can to stop her.
100%. I'm glad you brought up Jena Griswold because she has been so adamant that Trump is a criminal, that he shouldn't be on the ballot. And I can see her trying to pull any tricks she can to do whatever she can possibly to get Trump off the ballot, to do something to not count those votes. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past her. She's definitely an activist in her role, more concerned about being on corporate news media than actually trying to be a fair representative of the voters of Colorado. So I could see her trying to pull some types of tricks that way. Is there any possibility of any legal action or recall or anything like that with Secretary of State Griswold?
Most definitely. I mean, we're obviously going to try to get through this appeal to the United States Supreme Court first, and that because that's going to dictate how we're going to handle our national delegate allocation that we get for Colorado specifically. But once we get past that, we're going to explore ways to hold Jena Griswold politically accountable. This should go. This should go beyond partisanship, right? This is bigger than Republican versus Democrat. You have a sitting election official who is supposed to be playing everything down the middle, deliberately undermining free and fair elections. She's the one attacking democracy. She's the one that's attacking the election process and violating election integrity by trying to remove a candidate that is otherwise qualified. We can't allow that. When the government tells you which candidates are approved and who you can vote for, then you don't have a free and fair election. You don't have a free country. We're going to be headed down the path of the Soviet Union if we allow them to get away with this.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I remember that day watching on the news. I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure many Coloradans out there, when they saw the headline come through that Donald Trump was removed from the ballot, it just felt like a line had been crossed, like a threshold moment. Like, here we go. We're going past this red line that we can't go back, in terms of our country, in terms of our republic, in terms of our constitution, in terms of the fact that we can even say we have a country anymore. I mean, it seems like you're exactly right. If this isn't stopped, if Griswold and her little cronies aren't held accountable, if Coloradans aren't allowed to vote for who they want to, then yeah, I mean, it seems to me like the country's done. And I hate to use like extreme rhetoric and trying. I'm not a sky is falling type of person, but it is definitely one of those red line moments. It seems to me.
Yeah, I don't know how else you can articulate it or how else you can describe the situation when you have the government telling you that you can vote for a certain set of candidates but not these other ones. Then I mean, what else can we call that? That's stuff that you saw in the Soviet Union. That's stuff you saw in Germany. That's stuff that you saw that you do see in banana republics. This is not this is not good, right? I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't so tragic, but the fact remains is that America was founded on this notion of self-governance, where we, the people, get to vote for our representatives, the ones we think are best suited to serve us. Uh, but if we do away with that, then what do we really have? I shudder to think the consequences if the Supreme Court of the United States doesn't step in and overturn this.
Dave, I was thinking too, imagine if we had one of these never Trumpers as the chairman of the Republican Party. If you hadn't been elected and put in this leadership position, I can only imagine that if we were in this situation and you had somebody up there who was a total anti-Trump partisan, within the Republican Party, what kind of situation we would be in? We wouldn't see the party stand up and appeal to the Supreme Court, appeal this issue, and try and fight for the voters of Colorado.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't. You never know what would have happened if someone else had been elected to this position, but given the history and the track record of the Colorado Republican Party, I think it's safe to assume that past certainly some past chairs or some of the people that I ran against would not have done anything. They would have stayed on the sidelines and they would have allowed Trump's team to fight this all on their own. Problem is we can't do that because the other side isn't fighting on their own. They're it's a team for them. It's a team sport. They have dark money groups. They have the Colorado Attorney General's office. They have the Colorado Secretary of State's office. They have taxpayers support as well as George Soros support coming in to take out Donald Trump and engage in election interference. And the problem with that is that it takes away resources from Donald Trump to run a fair campaign nationwide when he's in the midst of a primary and then probably in the general. He's going to be depleted. This sort of lawfare and interference is designed to certainly kick him off the ballot, but at a minimum, weaken him before he gets to November of 2024.
Oh, there's definitely nothing they won't do to stop a Trump presidency, and it's kind of frightening to see the implications. I mean, they'll let this country burn or be torn apart. They'll shred the Constitution if they have to stop him, and it's kind of frightening. But it's nice to know here in Colorado, unlike years past, we have a Republican Party who's going to actually stand up and fight back and be a real opposition party again. So I applaud you for those efforts.
Thank you.
Well, moving on from Donald Trump, let's talk about the other big political story here in Colorado, Republican Party politics. So, Dave, what do you think about Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's decision to switch congressional districts?
Before I give my opinion here, let me just preface it by saying I'm a huge fan of Lauren Boebert. I've loved her service in Congress. I know she's had her own personal challenges, but by and large, she's been a wonderful vote for the liberty movement. She's I think in totality has shown Coloradans, how we should want our representatives to conduct themselves on policy. Now, with respect to the politics of it, from a party chairman's perspective, I think it's problematic. I know they disagree. I understand their logic as to why they think this is a better move for the party and for retaining the majority. But I can't see it that way because I simply don't know if they're correct. They're building in a lot of assumptions that Adam Frisch will no longer receive the amount of support or money that he's been accustomed to so far. They're assuming that the DCCC, the Democrat wing of the congressional of their congressional efforts, are going to somehow abandon District 3 in Colorado. I don't know if that's the case. We don't know. So time will tell if they're right or if I'm right. But I fear that the Democrats understand what's at stake here. It's the majority in the United States House of Representatives. It doesn't seem to me, or it's not clear to me, that they're simply going to abandon it just because Lauren Boebert decided to move to a safer seat. So in my mind, I have to spend more money, more resources on a candidate that is lesser known and one who isn't as strong on fundraising as Lauren Boebert. So that's why I disagree that the move is somehow beneficial for the party. I hope I'm wrong. I hope as time goes on, we discover that it is the case, that it's easier to win, but I just don't think we can assume that at this juncture. Number two, I think what's problematic for her personally is that she's going to have to overcome the criticism that all of her other competitors and critics are going to now level against her, and that she's engaging in carpetbagging, that she's doing this for her own personal benefit, not the benefit of anyone else, that she wants to retain her seat in Congress at all costs. Um, I think she's capable enough. She has a team that's certainly smart enough to figure out how to present the situation so that it doesn't harm her in the primary. But I think it's a hard sell, especially when you have no roots within that community. She's literally moving from one opposite end of the state to a completely different place where the voters, they don't have a direct connection to her. They know her through media, social media. Her publicity is of course nationwide, but that doesn't mean you can simply move over and convince voters that really don't know who you are to all of a sudden just accept you. I think for those reasons it's going to be tough, but make no mistake, she has a considerable amount of money in her campaign coffers, and she certainly has the highest name ID amongst Colorado Republicans. So she's going to be a formidable candidate. Uh, I don't know what's going to happen. I've given up on reading the tea leaves or making predictions in politics, as you never know what could happen. No one would have ever guessed that Scott Tipton would have lost to Lauren Boebert in 2020. So who knows what's going to happen? Maybe this was a good decision, maybe it wasn't. But I just don't think it was the slam dunk smart move as others are saying it is.
No, that's a very fair point. Those are all very fair criticisms, and I agree with you. Congresswoman Boebert has been a great vote in the state or in the Congress and the House of Representatives. Definitely voting with the Liberty Caucus and doing a great job up there. But yeah, very interesting. It definitely throws a monkey wrench. Oh, I think we had a lot of great candidates in CD4 already. A lot of great patriots and conservatives and grassroots people that you and I both know well who had announced and would have made phenomenal congressmen. We'll see if they still have an opportunity to. Still some ways to the primary to see exactly what's going to happen, but definitely throws a monkey wrench in their plan in their political plans. Of course, I really agree with what you said about CD3. I saw something. I think it was on ColoradoPolitics.com talking about how it's more favorable now for Republican, supposedly in Congressional District 3. I know it's hard to even
Yeah, they're
measure
ba-
that.
they're, they're basing it off of uh, uh, a national publication that they normally, I forget the name, it escapes me at the moment, but essentially it's turned from toss up to lean Republican. But that was within a day of Lauren Boebert making that announcement. The problem with that is that no polling has been conducted whatsoever to make that determination. It's just based on some gut feeling that some pundit came up with. I think there are a lot of assumptions being built in to the logic of moving from 3 to 4, and I just don't think anyone can, with a straight face, say that that's 100% correct. I think we need to see some polling first. I think we need to see some fundraising, like the next fundraising quarter. That's really going to tell you whether or not Adam Frisch is going to remain strong and if he has staying power. If he does, then it's going to turn out to be a bad move for the party. And I don't know if anyone's going to write about it, but my point is no one can make this claim that somehow Congressional District 3 is moved from a toss up to a lean Republican just because Boebert left. We need to see fundraising numbers, and we need to see polling data that confirms this. Some sort of empirical evidence. Absent that, I just think we're all guessing.
No, that's a very fair point for sure. I would say it does present a unique challenge to whoever ends up being the candidate for Congressional District 3. I agree with you entirely that the Democrats at the national level are not going to give up on taking that congressional seat. As you said, the fight is for the majority. They know they need to win it. If they need to win CD3 if they want to get the majority nationwide, or that's so maybe it's a better opportunity for them. They might possibly pull back money or maybe even keep spending what they're at. And yeah, but I don't think they're going to give up fighting for that seat for sure. It's just going to depend on the voters, like you said, the polling and how strong the candidate is on the Republican side going into 2024.
Sure.
Well, moving on, Dave, what are your predictions for the 2024 legislative session here in Colorado? What kind of legislation do you think Democrats will propose this year?
I think there's going to be a tug of war between the Democrats who are more moderate, so-called, mind you. I like even your most moderate Democrats nowadays are still far left. It's just that you have this civil war happening between the crazies, the far left crazies versus the less far left crazies. Um, and what's sad about it is when I was in the legislature, you kind of had reasonable Democrats that understood that the institution and the traditions of ensuring that there's a fair process in place. Uh, those people are gone. You have Julie McCluskey, who, your recent guest, good friend of mine, Scott Bottoms, my representative, is absolutely right. She's unhinged. Um, but she's not as unhinged as maybe Representative Epps, for example, or Stephanie Vigil, who is one of these crybaby Gen. I think she's a Gen Zer. I don't even know what generation she is. She might be a millennial, but she's certainly this woke socialist crybaby who thinks that everyone around her should pay for her to live and provide her housing and take care. She never grew up. She's a child, and that's a problem that you're seeing across the board in the Democrat caucus in the House of Representatives and the Senate for Colorado. Is you have these people that never grew up. They think everyone should take care of them and be responsible for their well-being. Those people are in the majority, and they're fighting to enact radical legislation that takes away your freedom, your money, and your choices. You have some Democrats that are willing to kind of get in the way because wait a minute, this is a little too much, and I think it's mostly out of self-preservation. But nonetheless, they understand that if this goes too far, Democrats are going to be in trouble for 2024 because Coloradans are only going to tolerate so much. I don't know if you saw the recent poll that was released or at least reported on by Axiom, where 50% of the state thinks that we're heading in the wrong direction. That's pretty damn significant when you consider that the majority of the registration of voters is unaffiliated, followed by Democrat. So when you have half the state with the sort of registration gap that you're seeing, thinking that we're on the wrong track, it's a pretty bad sign for them, and I think it's a good sign that there's going to be a market correction for Republicans. We have to be able to put forward good candidates that are going to be about serving the people. If we can do that, then I think we're going to have a really good 2024 generally. But the legislature, it's going to be crazy town. You're going to see infighting. You're going to see folks that are just not going to be able to control themselves, and hopefully the Republicans figure out how to further expose that to the public as those fights play out.
Well, that's a good point. I really, exposing it to the public, that's a big mission of Free State Colorado is to get people down there testifying on the good bills, speaking out against the bad bills. I know it might not make too much of a difference in terms of the outcome of the vote, but it's very empowering to be, 10 feet away from some of these socialist legislators, look them in the eye and tell them they're wrong. And it's also equally important to be down there and support our pro-liberty leaders. We have great representatives like Scott Bottoms, Ken DeGraff, Stephanie Luck, some of these people down there that deserve the support of the Liberty community, showing up and testifying at their committee hearings in support of the bills that they're pushing through to defend our liberty, to stand up for our freedom. Is there anything else, people in individuals, anything else Coloradans can do to help support our pro-liberty legislators in 2024?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, everything you recommended is great. I mean, we do have an election coming up, so certainly support those guys in their reelection bids. Show up to the Capitol, help testify, and you can even donate to our party because we're helping Scott Bottoms, for example, to sue the Speaker of the House, specifically the state of Colorado, over the expansion of the income tax credit. That thing was passed unconstitutionally. And when Scott told me, we put our heads together and we figured out the best course of action was to sue because they didn't follow the Constitution. They didn't follow the process correctly. So we're working with him and a whole host of members of a coalition that we've brought together. It's Colorado Libertarian Party is a part of this. We have the Tabor Foundation, CUT, Colorado Union of Taxpayers, Colorado Hispanic Republicans, the Liberty Scorecard. They're working with us and Scott to undo this law, to make it null and void, so that we can protect $182 million of Tabor surplus. The voters rejected Prop HH because it was a raid on Tabor, and I think the people are going to be supportive of our efforts to undo this law because it does the same thing and it expands those benefits to illegal aliens. So again, these crazy leftists in the legislature right now are they're out of control. They're going too far to the left, and I think the Colorado voters they're gonna punish them a year from now.
Well, and talking to Representative Bottoms too about his lawsuit, I thought the story was just going to be about the lawsuit and about the bill and the lack of process, improper passing of legislation, but really exposing this culture of harassment, this culture of bullying. It really, kind of provided a window behind the scenes into what's going on down there and how bad things have gotten in the state house. The fact that we have so many legislators resigning, I mean, so many Democrats resigning. You'd think it'd be easy streets. I mean, imagine if the Republicans had the kind of majority they do, you'd be celebrating in the streets. You wouldn't be, I couldn't possibly see a situation where these Democrats are just fleeing the party, fleeing the legislature because it's such a hostile work environment. So this lawsuit exposed that. And I think that's a really key point.
A part of the problem is that you've had such an exodus of institutional knowledge and people like myself who served in the legislature for a number of years, and we know how it's supposed to work. And there's a simple rule: the majority gets its way, but the minority gets its say. That's a sacred legislative deliberative rule that needs to be respected. The problem we have is we have these crazy leftists who have now occupied, if not a majority, a significant plurality of their own caucus, and so they don't respect the fact that, okay, you may get your way, but you still have to let the minority express why it's a bad idea. That's a fundamental part of our system of governance, where the majority rules but the minority has rights, and we get to make the political case, if we're in the minority, why you're wrong, so that the voters can ultimately decide during the election season. But when the majority gets greedy, when they not only want to get their way but also have their say, that completely shuts out the minority and shuts out any diverse thought that should be debated and deliberated on in the chamber. Um, I can't overstate this. The it If I was there, well, let me say this: you also had good Liberty Republicans like myself, Pat Neville, and a few others that would never have tolerated what's going on. We would have shut the place down because we know the rules very well, and we would have put the kibosh on this. And that's the other problem, is that on our side specifically, you don't have enough people that are willing to press their constitutional rights, and those that do don't have enough backup in their caucus to do so. So when Scott tries to assert his right to speak on behalf of his constituency, he just doesn't have enough support within his own caucus, because a lot of them don't know. They just simply don't know how the building works. And so that's a bad combination when you have the bullies who are in charge. They're the ones who have to enforce the rules. And then you have the people on your team that just don't know what the rules are or how to actually press them. Then you're going to have the situation that you have. So, the best thing I can say is the voters are going to have to bring balance back to the legislature, and our guys are going to have to continue to press their rights and remind the Democrats that the chamber is not a safe space. Despite what they may think, when you have a debate within the chamber, whether it's the House or the Senate, it's going to be something that's offensive because this is where worldviews are going to clash. This is not meant to be a safe space. This is not meant for some college professor type to come in and say, okay, they're there. We're not going to offend anyone. This is about the people's business, and we are going to have competing worldviews that are never going to mesh. But that's okay because that's the process. And if we can figure out a way to respect the process, we're going to be better. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen until the voters of Colorado kick out the offenders.
No, it's a very fair point. It's definitely going to be up to the voters and up to the party, to candidates, to people outside, activists who are going to make the case. We got to make sure the voters do not forget all of the bad behavior, whether it's the interruptions during the special session of these protesters, of these people who are just completely being out of line, and the speaker allowing it, to even encouraging it with Representative Epps and others. So, making sure that the voters are aware of all of the bad behavior of the legislators. We still have a year almost to go, so there's going to be a lot to happen between now and the 2024 election. But talking about the 2024 election, of course, starting with the legislative session and then moving into the primary. I know the Republican Party of Colorado has been fighting against the open primary. What's the status of this fight?
Yeah, we're taking it to the next level. We filed a preliminary injunction. We felt that it was necessary to get some sort of answer before the 2024 election so that we could either have a closed primary where only Republicans are deciding, or if the status quo remains. We have a pretty favorable judge that we think is going to be fair and will hopefully administer the law as written. And by law as written, I mean the Constitution, the First Amendment. But we ultimately don't know. However, because we've filed a preliminary injunction, it's going to force the court to make a decision quicker than it otherwise wanted to. It's a higher threshold, but it's still nonetheless it's an expedited time frame as a result. We also, what hasn't really been reported, which I'm surprised about, is that we've not only asked for the law to be overturned on constitutional grounds, but in the alternative, if the judge doesn't quite agree with us or doesn't want to go that far, in the alternative, we have asked the judge to respect our opt-out vote. 65% of the Central Committee voted to opt out of the open primary, and we said, Judge, if we think we're right on the constitutionality of this. However, if you don't want to go that far, at least give us this mechanism to opt out so we can nominate the candidates of our choosing.
Wow, yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. Any idea when you might have some more information, or when they might rule on this injunction?
Um, it's going to go very quickly. We should have some sort of oral arguments in January, and hopefully a decision. Loose time frame, but early February.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's going to be big. And unfortunately, we're seeing even more attacks on our election system. There's some ballot initiatives being proposed to totally radically change how Colorado votes. And is the Republican Party going to be fighting some of those, at least in the polls?
Yeah, we're gonna do our best. I mean, this effort by Kent Thiry is it's beyond crazy, and the Democrats should really be against this as well because this is an attack on their party and their rights of association as well. But for a Republican standpoint, this is an existential battle. If we don't succeed in defeating Kent Thiry, then there's really no point in having any political party. This is a guy he desperately wants to be governor. I don't care what his handlers or his communication director has said. The guy wants to be governor, and that's why he's trying to change the rules so he doesn't have to run in any nominating contest in either party. Keep that in mind. He can't win the nomination in either the Republican or the Democrat Party. So he wants to change the rules so that he can bypass all of that and use deceptive marketing to trick voters into giving him the governorship. Um, we have to oppose this if we have at every turn we have to oppose this. But what I will say is that just from a pure policy standpoint, this is all the terrible things you could ever think of. It's a jungle primary. It's ranked choice voting. It's open, right? So anyone can vote regardless of political affiliation, and it allows for petition signatures to also be for anyone. You could be Republican or unaffiliated, and you could sign the petition to put that person on the ballot, and then it does away with caucus whatsoever. So really, what he's trying to do is he's trying to create a system by which only wealthy people are going to be able to get elected. That's very problematic when you should know. If hopefully your listeners and viewers know this, but most of the wealthy people that run for political office, they don't do it because they're altruistic. They do it because they want to gain a competitive advantage for their own personal businesses or bottom line. So we can't allow them to undo these time tested traditional election mechanisms. Otherwise, they're just rewriting the rules to benefit themselves.
Yeah, that'll be a big fight for sure. Speaking of 2024, the November election, that's going to be most likely on the ballot. One of the other ballot issues that Colorado voters are going to be presented with is an issue to allow state funding or taxpayer funding for abortions. I'm sure you're following that one very closely, being 100% pro-life. But I guess my big question is, can life win in Colorado? Is a pro-life victory possible in the November 2024 ballot?
Sure it is, but it requires all of us being unified on a message that I think resonates with voters. It also requires our traditional donor class to stop listening to the failed strategists who want us to give up on this fight. The issue of life is a winning issue. If you look at all the polls, most Coloradans agree that there should be some sort of restriction on abortion. Um, it would seem to me that okay, well, let's start with the obvious. Abortion should not be funded by taxpayers. That's something that most voters are going to agree with. Most voters agree that you shouldn't be able to engage in certain sex selection abortions or disability selection abortions or race selection abortions. In other words, you shouldn't be able to abort a baby because they're black. You shouldn't be able to abort a baby because they have Down syndrome. You shouldn't be able to abort a baby because they're a girl. But that's what Democrats believe. And so if we start talking about the extremism on the part of the Democrats, then we're going to win. That's our biggest problem, is that our side traditionally has been afraid to throw a punch. When we instead, what we should be telling folks is that there is no baby that could ever escape the scalpel of a Democrat. Where is their line? They have no line. And if we start telling voters that this is just wholly unreasonable, they're going to agree with us, because most agree. Most agree that you shouldn't be able to do any of that stuff. You shouldn't be able to have the government force a business to offer it as a benefit or force the taxpayer to pay for it. We can win on these issues. We just have to start talking about them. When we do that, you're going to see more and more pro-life victories.
Wow. Yeah, well, I hope so for sure. So for 2024, the Life Initiative will be on the ballot and several others that are going to have some big impacts in Colorado. But Dave, where are the biggest opportunities for the Republican Party in the 2024 general election?
Well, we definitely have to defend Congressional District 3. So that's a defensive battle that we're obligated to, right? But our opportunities are going to come in Congressional District 8. What's so funny about everything that's gone on in Colorado is that Congressional District 8 has kind of gotten lost in the news cycle. No one really talks about it, but it is a competitive seat that we absolutely need to win to either retain the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives or expand it. So we're going to be heavily involved in making sure that Congresswoman Caraveo is a one-term congresswoman. That's probably our biggest pickup opportunity. And then the other opportunities are in our state legislature. Traditionally, the Republican Party has not really focused as much as it should have on the state. But that's a change that we've implemented, and we're going to target a number of seats in the state legislature that are competitive, that we should have won 2 years ago, and that we're likely to win this go around if we play our cards right. A few of them are pretty easy to find out. There's a House district in Douglas County, 43, that's occupied by Bob Marshall. We lost that seat by a few hundred votes. We should be able to pick that up, especially given his voting record. Stephanie Vigil, the crybaby socialist from Colorado Springs in 16, she should not be in that seat, and considering that my hometown is Colorado Springs, I'm going to take a very special interest in winning that seat back. There's Colin Larson's old seat. This is occupied by Tammy Story. This is House District 25. Should be able to win that seat as well, because these are all seats that we lost by few hundred votes. These are all pickup opportunities that I think can get us back to a better minority. I'm not promising that we're going to win majorities because we didn't get here overnight. And so we're not going to get back to where we should be overnight either. But I think we're going to be able to make some meaningful gains. And you're going to see that the Democrats are, I think, they're in store for a pretty big market correction, especially with Joe Biden as an albatross around their neck.
Awesome, wonderful, love it. And don't forget House District 50 up in Greeley, Weld County area. I mean, that was the
We
tightest.
won't forget Mary Young. Mary Young is on our list for sure.
And that was the closest race last election cycle in the state house. And hopefully, I'm really hopeful with the agreement you crafted with the Libertarian Party of Colorado to make sure we don't have any spoilers or any pro-liberty. You know, if we have a pro-liberty Republican, they should get the votes from all the pro-liberty voters in that community because that's who's got the best chance to win. So I really hope that that plays
That's a
out well.
it's a big priority, and you know, I think in Congressional District 4, that primary, not that it really matters for our deal because our deal dealt with competitive open seats. Nonetheless, I think there are candidates in Congressional District 4 that are going to be more than willing to sign the pledge. And then I think definitely in Congressional District 3, with Lauren Boebert crossing over and going to the 4th, I think you're going to see the remaining candidates, at least some of them, willing to sign the pledge there. And then in CD8, we're working on potentially getting a candidate to sign that pledge as well. For the state house races, that's a much easier conversation. And I think you're going to see a lot of folks, especially in those competitive seats, sign the Libertarian pledge as well. If we can take that off the table and make it a binary choice, provided that we give a good Liberty candidate in the alternative, then yeah, these Democrats are going to have a hard time retaining the majorities that they currently have.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And so, what do you think? You know, how many House seats, how many state Senate seats? What do you think you could pick up?
I think a conservative estimation is about 3 to 4, in the state house. Probably won't be able to keep, or probably won't be able to expand anything in the Senate, just because the mathematics don't work that way. We're playing more defense than we are offense. There's probably about one, maybe two Senate seats that we could go on offense for, but I'm primarily going to focus my efforts on the state house and then defending, 2 or 3 key Senate seats. The people that are certainly in trouble are Cleve Simpson. He's, I believe, Senate District 15. No, not 15. Excuse me. Well, I don't recall, but he's down south. I don't remember the number, but Cleve Simpson and then Perry Will. We got to definitely defend those seats, and then of course keep Senate District 12. That's Bob Gardner's seat. He's been termed out, but we don't think that Mark Snyder is going to be able to have the juice to flip that seat. So as long as we can maintain those seats and maybe go after a couple in the Senate, I think more or less 5 total between 2 chambers is a good conservative estimate on where we hope to land. We hope to overperform, but that's kind of what we think is in the realm of possibility.
Nice. Yeah, I'd love to see it. So, Dave, you talked a little bit earlier about how unaffiliated voters make up the largest percentage of Colorado voters in the state. What is your 30-second elevator pitch to unaffiliated voters across Colorado why they should support Republican candidates this year?
Just to get back to normal. I mean, the state is falling off the tracks. It's off the rails. You have increase in the cost of living. You have an increase in crime. You have an increase in woke indoctrination attempts against your children in schools. You have people that are figuring out ways to violate your ability to vote for the candidate you want to vote for, right? I mean, I get that people may not like Donald Trump, but this is bigger than Donald Trump. When the Democrats are deciding which candidates you can support, uh, then we got a problem here. They've gone too far to the left. What we're going to do is we're going to try and restore balance back to the state. This is what happens when you have one party rule. It just, everything goes off kilter and eventually falls apart, and that's what's happening right now. Even Jared Polis is starting to pick up on this, and that's why he's talking more conservatively. Look at his recent interviews where he's talking about how we need to respect parental rights, how we need to spend less and tax less, and how he's calling upon local governments to give tax cuts to people because the state wouldn't do it. He even understands that things are going too far to the left, and he's the most left governor we've ever had in the history of our state. I think people see what's going on, and I would encourage you, don't continue to enable it. These people should have lost your trust to govern because everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Let's restore some balance in place. Let's put some checks and balances in place. You don't have to give us all the power. We're not asking for that. We're just asking that you help us provide a little bit more accountability to a group of folks that have been running roughshod over everyone.
For individuals out there listening who are Republican or maybe independent, unaffiliated, or libertarian, what can they do to help get Republicans elected this year?
Sure.
Where should
Well,
they start?
sure. We'll visit our website. Go to cologop.org. Again, that's cologop.org. And there's many options that you can have. You certainly contribute. I'm always going to ask folks to contribute. And if you want to help us on the Trump fight, you're going to see this big, beautiful picture of Donald Trump's mugshot with a donation link. So click on that, help us out, because we're not funded by George Soros. So we rely on small dollar donors to help get us through. But beyond that, sign up to be on our email list. Sign up to stay informed, and because we'll tell you what's going on. The crooked media is not going to tell you everything. I call them out all the time. Kyle Clark is a piece of crap who won't tell you the truth. And he does it in his ridiculous blazers with a smug look on his face. That's his shtick. Okay, fair enough. But at the end of the day, he calls himself a journalist, and he's anything but. He's a political hack that works as the PR wing for the crooked Democrats. And so don't listen to him or anyone else in the media. Come get news from us. We'll tell you what's going on, especially the things that no one else wants to talk about. And then get involved in your local party. This all starts now. This is a great opportunity to become a precinct leader and or committee person, and have a meaningful role in the party apparatus. You start getting involved, more and more opportunities are going to present themselves, and eventually we're going to reach critical mass where we're going to make gains. We're going to have a good 2024. I know a lot of people have been a lot of people, let's just say, failed strategists of the Republican Party, and people that hope we fail. Um, they're pessimistic on 2024, but I'm optimistic. I think things are looking on the up for us, and I think you're going to see a lot of unexpected results in 2024.
Perfect. Well, Dave, anything to leave us with?
Nope, I think we pretty much covered it. We're gonna fight for your freedoms, and you know, I'm gonna keep it PG. But if you guys want to know how we're feeling about the radical left and their assault on our freedoms and liberties, go watch an interview with Elon Musk, and and listen to his quote about what others can do with themselves who are violating your freedoms.
Awesome. Well, couldn't agree with you more, Dave. Wish you the best going into 2024. Please keep me. I'll keep people updated about what's going on, how they can help, where the key battles are in the party, to help the party out. So, best wishes. Take care. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today.
You bet. Thanks so much, Brandon.